Hey, future teachers, welcome to 2B Thursday, week 2, our second lesson of the week. The first lesson, 2A, we talked about teacher productivity tools, how technology can make your life easier as a teacher. And this is just sort of a follow-up to that with some important things to keep in mind when you are finding resources and tools and using them in your classroom. There's some things to keep in mind. One, not every technology tool is the best thing ever created. There's some really, really terrible ones out there. And two, it's important to keep in mind that you always need to give credit where credit's due. Some things are free to use in the classroom. Some things you have to give credit to. Some things you have to pay to use in the classroom. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like as well for this week. So 2A, we briefly hit on the 4 E's, and we're going to be digging into those more here during 2B. So this is a framework for thinking about if technology is beneficial for your classroom. And the 4 E's are effectiveness, efficiency, enhancement, engagement. And we covered what those mean a little bit last time, and we'll cover that more in detail today. And we'll look at this checklist that you can use to evaluate resources. And you'll actually end up creating a screencast somewhat like this, but actually evaluating a resource that you might use in your future classroom. So some big picture questions to think about, and these will be addressed in your class prep as well to sort of expand on this discussion. Can a technology tool or resource have more than one of those E's? Can something be effective and efficient? Can it be enhancing and engaging? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. Technology tool can meet all of the E's. Maybe it just does one of them really well. But there's definitely no limit to, you're not saying like this tool is only effective, this one is only efficient. But that second one, should a technology tool or resource have all 4 E's or have multiple ones? And I would say the answer to that is not necessarily. Maybe a tool is just really, really engaging for students and it helps them get excited. That's great. Maybe another tool is just really, really efficient and it saves a ton of time compared to what you would be doing otherwise. That's totally fine too. So while technology tools can meet more than one of these E's, they don't necessarily have to. And that's not necessarily a bad thing either. So when you're looking at different tools, there's a lot of tools we've used already. S'more, for example, Poplet for creating your concept map. You want to think about, is this tool actually a good fit for my classroom? And one of the ways to do that is with this 4 E's checklist. And there's a link to this checklist in the announcement today, so you can pull this up and look at it and use it. But these just provide you some questions to ask when you're looking at a technology tool or technology resource for the first time. So you've got some general questions here to look at. Are the learning objectives clear? Where does the tool come from? Who made it? Does it? What are the usage requirements? So like some things you just can't use on an iPad, for example. Is the content current? Is it relevant? Is it accurate? So these are big picture questions that are always really important to ask about technology. But then these address each of the 4 E's. So for effectiveness, is it aligned with specific standards? Does it help students retain their understanding for a longer, more sustained period of time? Does it connect with their prior knowledge? Things like that. Efficiency, big thing there. Do you save time? Do you save money? Do you save energy? Enhancement, does it let students do something they couldn't otherwise do or explore a topic in a new way? Or are they able to represent their learning in a new way? Creating a video or a digital presentation or creating a website, something like that wouldn't be possible without technology. Or can they apply their knowledge in an authentic or real world context? So maybe they're actually engaging in solutions with students around the world and collaborating with students from different countries and different cultures. That wouldn't be possible without technology. Engagement, are they more interested? Are they paying more attention? Can they work collaboratively? Or is it more interactive than just sitting there sort of absorbing information or what otherwise might be happening? So you'll be using this 4 E's checklist this week to evaluate a resource that you find, something in your own subject area or something that can be applied in your subject area. Try to do something that you maybe haven't seen before or heard about before. And there's a Google Doc full of links of possibilities in the announcement today that you can check out some of those as well. But if there's a technology tool or resource that you've kind of always been curious about or interested in trying, this is a great week to check that out as well. So you can definitely use some of the suggestions I provide, but you don't have to at all. It can be something you're interested in as well. So let's just try an example of what this would look like. And there's a couple things going on with this. Like I said, you're going to pick a technology tool or resource to evaluate this week using the 4E's checklist. But to do that, you're going to create a screencast or a recording of yourself evaluating it. So if you've never made a screencast before, it's what you're watching right now. It's a video of what's on your screen and a recording of you narrating over that. So first we're going to start, I'm just going to show you an example of what this might look like, what the finished product might look like. And there's also an example in the badge assignment as well. But then we'll talk about how to actually create a screencast, since I realize this might be the first time you're creating a screencast. So an example might be, hey, I'm going to use this 4E's checklist to evaluate Poplet, because it's an effective resource that I could use in my future classroom, which would be teaching secondary biology or elementary school or whatever it might be. So you give a little introduction. First, you talk about these general questions. And so for Poplet, well, there's not really learning objectives for it because it's not content specific, but it can be used across any subject area where students could create concept maps to demonstrate their understandings of things. But it doesn't specifically have learning objectives to it because it's not content specific. You could provide a little background on the company who created it. Usually this is from the About Us page. The limitations, you could say, oh, they actually have an Android and an iPad app for Poplet, so you can use it in a web browser like this, any modern web browser. Or you could also download the Poplet Lite app for your iPad, for example, or your iPhone. And then this one doesn't really apply for Poplet because it's a creation app. You're creating content, you're adding things yourself, so it's up to the user whether or not the content is current, relevant, and accurate. And so then you can move on to talking about effectiveness. And again, some of these won't necessarily apply depending on what you're doing. If you're looking at a resource that is, specific to Spanish or specific to social studies and offers lots of content, something like this is going to apply. If you're looking at a content creation app, iMovie, Poplet, Prezi, S'more, some of these ones are not necessarily going to apply. But by using this tool or resource, students will be able to apply their knowledge of a concept. That's absolutely true. Poplet's a great example of how students could apply their knowledge and create a graphic representation of their understanding of a particular topic. And if I was doing this for real, I would want to actually have a mind map created here so that I could talk about this example. So make sure that you actually test out the app that you're talking about and you have sort of a finished product here that you would be showing people. So that's the big picture idea. You would go through that checklist, and if you want to, print this out or something like that so you could have it kind of in front of you and use it as a script, that could be helpful as well, so you're not having to jump back and forth between the tabs. I'd recommend doing that just so you have it to refer to. But you'll want to talk through each of these: effectiveness, efficiency, enhancement, and engagement, and talk about how the specific app you're looking at meets or doesn't meet, or maybe it's not applicable to those 4 E's. So that's the end goal. Again, there's a finished example of what that looks like in the badge assignment as well. But to create your screencast, if you've never made one before, there's also 2 tutorial videos in the badge screencast, but if you're a PC user, I recommend using Screencast-O-Matic, or Screencastify is also a good one if you use Chrome. It's a free plugin on Chrome. Again, always make sure you're always using the free versions of everything. You don't ever need to pay for things here. But this will let you create a recording that will record what's on your screen and record your voice, and then in the end you'll share it to YouTube, and you'll turn that link into the YouTube video and tweet it out. If you're a Mac user, you can use QuickTime. So QuickTime is really, really easy. You would just do a search for QuickTime, and then you can say File, New Screen Recording, and that will record everything that's on your screen. And there's a tutorial on how to do that as well. You want to make sure you have your right microphone selected. So always start with both of these. Always make sure to start with just a quick 10-second test, because you want to make sure it's working before you go through and do the whole thing. So do a quick test, make sure it records, and again, there's tutorials on both of these in the badge assignment. But the main idea is to pick a standard in your area. This can be one that you worked with earlier. Find some sort of technology resource, an app, a website, a video, an activity, a simulation, whatever it is, something that you could use in your future classroom. And then review that resource with the 4E's checklist through a screencast with one of those tools. So that's the big picture idea for Badge 6. And hopefully through that, it'll give you a better understanding of these 4E's and how you can use them in your classroom and how you can use them to evaluate different technology resources. When you're done, you'll post the screencast to YouTube. In the description on YouTube, just do a quick summary of what you created, and then you'll also tweet it out with the EDUC W200 hashtag. All right, so the other thing to talk about, we're talking a lot about finding and using resources in the classroom. We're talking about evaluating resources, but when you are finding these resources or creating videos or building websites, anything at all, when you're using other people's resources, images, videos, music, how do you know if it's okay to use those resources in whatever you're creating? Are there rules around that? And the answer is yes, there are some rules around that. So this next part of the video, we're talking about these ideas of copyright and fair use. So, special rules apply to teachers, which is a good thing because in general, as a teacher, you have a lot more freedom to use things on the internet for educational purposes. You don't have freedom to use things for commercial purposes to make money off them, but you do have a lot of freedom to use images, videos, resources for educational purposes, which is great. So in the announcement, there's the link to this copyright and fair use video. It's a really good video. It's a really short video, but it gives an explanation of kind of what's okay to use in the classroom and what's not. So make sure to watch that video. There's also a short fair use quiz that you'll take, and it's linked to in the Canvas announcement as well. So just make sure that you take that, and it'll give you feedback. You can take it multiple times if you want to. It's more just meant to be a learning experience, not to be something to stress out about. So that's in there as well. But in general, there's 4 main factors that determine if you can use someone else's work in your classroom: someone else's images, someone else's videos, someone else's music. These are the 4 things that if you were to ever get in trouble, this is sort of what's looked at under the Copyright Act. What was the purpose and character of the copyrighted work? What was the nature of it? The amount and substantiality of the portion used. So did you download a copy of Frozen and use the entire thing in your lesson without giving credit to Disney? Well, that might get you in some trouble, potentially. Or if you downloaded Frozen, uploaded it to YouTube, and then, I don't know, somehow turned it into a lesson, that's not going to fly with the folks at Disney. Versus if you use 30 seconds of it, then, generally that's okay. Sometimes Disney can kind of be a stickler. And then the effective use upon the potential market. So by you using someone else's work, does that mean no one else is buying their work or paying for it? Has it had an impact on their business or on their company or on their profits or something like that? So those are the types of things that can generally get you in trouble when you're using other people's work. And usually that doesn't apply as much for teachers as it does for businesses are under very different standards than teachers are under. This is a really helpful resource from PBS. I'd recommend just pausing the video for a second and reading through this about sort of what's allowed and what's not allowed. But in general, here's what you should just abide by. Check who owns whatever you're trying to use. If you're able to get permission to use it, that's great. The biggest thing, give credit to the creator. Purchase whatever it is if necessary, and then use it responsibly for education purposes in your classroom. If you're using things in your classroom as a teacher, by and large, you're going to be fine. If you're stealing other people's work and posting it online and passing it off as your own work, you're definitely going to get into trouble. So just make sure that if you're using other people's work, you're always giving credit to the creator and that you're using it responsibly. Those are the big two things to keep in mind for this course, but really for all courses in the School of Education and in your future as an educator. And on a similar note, in terms of how to get permission to use it or check who owns it, there's this thing called Creative Commons. And I'm not going to get too deep into it, but the idea is you can add these little stamps or licenses to the work that you create to let other people know, usually teachers, that it's okay to use your work. You're essentially saying, hey, I created this lesson plan, or I created this worksheet, or I created this classroom video. But even though I created it, it's okay for you to also use it as long as you share it with other people, or as long as you don't use it for commercial purposes and try to make money off of my work. So this is a really common thing in education. People will create these awesome resources, but they'll put a Creative Commons license on them to say, hey, this is free to use as long as you're using it for education purposes, as long as you're also sharing it with other people. So part of your assignment this week, you'll be working more on your e-portfolio, and you'll be adding a Creative Commons license to your website just to say to other teachers, hey, if you find something that you like here, it's fine to use for education purposes. You can't use it for commercial purposes and make money off of it. But if you want to use the things that I've created, if they're helpful in the classroom, great, go ahead and use it. And that's one of the wonderful things about Twitter also, is that you'll find so many teachers who are openly just sharing their resources, things that they've created to help other teachers find great resources in their classroom. So there's a tutorial for that in the module this week, but that's one of the things that you'll be working on this week also. In general, throughout this class, you'll be creating, websites, you'll be making some videos, you'll be, doing things like that. When you find images, it's best to either cite them or find images that are free to use. And these are some links you can use, but the best way really to do that is just go to Google image searches. And when you search for an image, you'll... gets me every time. You'll want to go to Tools, Usage Right, and just say labeled for reuse, or for education, you can say labeled for non-commercial reuse. And this means any of these images are fine for you to use. Of course, you'll want to cite where the image came from by providing a link, but these are all images that people have said, hey, I'm okay with other people using this image. It's totally fine. So again, that's just Tools, Usage Rights, labeled for non-commercial reuse. And that's always just a best practice to get into. If you're using something for a presentation, for school, it's something that as teachers we're not always the best at, but it's a good habit to get into just to make sure that the material you're using, the people who created it are okay with you using it. That's the same with music. These are some sites that you can use. We won't be getting too much into music use this semester, but if you need it, those are some examples of sites also as well. And in terms of citations for this class, you don't need to use like APA or MLA or anything like that. As long as you link to the site, that's great. If you can add an author or a title, that's fine. But really all I need is links to things. So if you're using something that you didn't create, always make sure to give credit where credit's due. That's the big point of the second half of this lesson that I'm going to try and hammer home. anything you use that you didn't create, always make sure to at least provide a link for where you came from. And just get in that habit of providing credit, because that's really something important to stress with your future students as well. You want them to be providing credit and citations for where their work came from. So it's a good habit to get into now and to just carry forward with you. So like in your SMORE, for example, if you used images from other people, put a little link at the bottom and just say images courtesy of link, 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 link. Great habit to get into. So again, this week, you'll be adding a Creative Commons license to the footer of your page. You'll also be working on your home and about me pages, and there's some more information in the announcement on that. And then you'll also be working on that screencast badge as well. That's the evaluation of the resource. So if you have any questions, of course, let me know. Otherwise, you're doing a great job. Everyone seems to be keeping up with things and understanding things, so that's awesome. And I'm always available if you have questions on anything at all. Otherwise, I'll talk to you in the next video, or I'll see you on Flipgrid and Twitter.